Wisdom of Ayahuasca.
We asked Chat GPT, what are the 10 things that first-time ayahuasca drinkers want to know? And so what we're going to do is we're going to read the thing and then address that.
Okay, so the first one is what to expect. They want to know what the experience will be like and what they might feel, see, or hear during the ceremony.
Oh, man. Okay. You have a desire to do something. You have a motivation to do something. And so clearly, you're going to have some sort of expectations of the thing. We know from drinking ayahuasca so many times, you kind of have to simultaneously go in with expectations, but without being tied to those expectations.
Yeah, I think a lot of times I can get why someone would focus a lot on expectations because they're going into ayahuasca for a reason. So then there's a lot of hesitation, but I also think it's because of the media that's out there. So it's framed in a way where they hear the extremes of the story of people pooping in their pants or,
Vomiting.
Vomiting and purging and all those things. But yeah, at the end of the day, it is an egoic response to really kind of want a certain thing to have an outcome for it.
One thing that pops into my mind about why somebody would want to kind of generally know what happens is because they're afraid.
Yeah.
Everything that's out there does exist, but it's like life. Like there's so many different variations. A ceremony is really like the most extreme, concentrated experience of life times like 10 or 100 in a night. So in the same way that like you've got every sort of way to live a life, you've got every expression of that is captured, in a YouTube video or wherever you saw it that may be sensationalistic just because, and maybe like you saw it because it had the most views because it's sensationalized,
exactly.
So I think it's a good thing to address the fears of people. I've had Aya over 40 times. I stopped counting. And what's important is to do it with a reputable group. It's definitely advised that someone close to you, someone that you know, has sat with this group and this shaman just to like vouch for them. So if that's the case, I say you're pretty okay because ayahuasca is not a toxic chemical. It's not a chemical that kills people. It just has to be done in a way that is very respected, in a way where the people that are giving you the medicine know what they're doing. They understand the strength of the medicine that they're giving you in order to gauge, have you had enough or have you had too much? Yeah, going back to answer the question, there's just all sorts of variations of what kind of journey you could have. But in general, I would just generalize that you're going to have a lot of lessons compacted, concentrated in a very short amount of time. And the experience is going to feel very transcendent. And it's going to be wild. To say the least.
Another thing that just kind of came to mind in terms of what would I tell myself, like what to expect, that's kind of reasonable that I think everyone experiences is to get ready to surrender. I think that's the key thing because when we're asking too many things about, what's going to happen here, what's going to happen there, is part of us is not willing to just be like, all right, I'm going to go in deep. I'm just going to let go. I'm going to see what happens and be comfortable with it.
That's the best. Right? You just nailed it. That's the best point, is to go in. Obviously, you go there with a motivation.
Yeah.
But you have to be completely willing to surrender to the flow of that experience. Because if you can do that and you can breathe through any discomfort, you'll be okay.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Let's go into the second question.
The second one is safety concerns. They want to know about the potential risks and how to prepare themselves physically and mentally for the ceremony.
Wow, there's a lot there. Oh man. Do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like the potential risks, I think people do think about that a lot because I think part of them knows that something that they're doing in their regular life is already not aligned. So then going into the ceremony, you're probably going to come out as a new version where a lot of the things that you're doing, whether it's your job, the friends you have, or other things that you are doing, just will not align with the newer version of yourself. And then to prepare yourself physically and mentally for that process, and I think that's like that's a risk, at least from what I hear when people are hesitant.
Right.
Obviously, like what you said, it's not toxic. It's not going to kill you. So what is the thing
Right.
that scares people then?
Right.
It's like, oh, I'm going to become this new person. I'm going to have to maybe drop a lot of things
Right.
to really go towards the highest version of myself. And that might be too much for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think if the person is already researching ayahuasca and they're curious about it, they're probably willing to take that risk because it's generally not people's first or second or third choice.
Yes.
Right? So the psychic risk element, I think you addressed that well. And I think I'll talk a little bit about the physical risks. In general, ayahuasca is a medicine that restores you. It returns you to a state that you were in when you were a child, because we're all born with DMT in our brain. Actually, we have the highest amount of DMT at birth, at death, and in near-death experiences. They're all transitional states. But as we grow up and we get conditioned by society, we get molded, we have to compromise and do things that we don't necessarily want to do, be friends with people, we have to entertain them, have to deal with work stuff, etc. You get worn down, and that alignment gets worn down, and it's counteractive to what DMT does in our body, which is basically let us be able to be our truest self and flow with everything. So in general, the medicine is a restorer. It's like if you think of Western drugs, it's not actually healing you, the Western medicine. It's pushing the effects of that virus, or it's letting the fever come down so that your own immune system can win the fight. And so ayahuasca isn't like a Western drug in the fact that it's some sort of external chemical that's coming in to assist you. The way that I see ayahuasca is that it restores your body very quickly to its natural healthy state. That's the first point. The second point is that the reason why we advise that you sit with a reputable group is because we have a protocol. When I was an organizer, we had protocols. We would do a health form and we would see if there were any, we call them contraindications. If some person is on antidepressants, that doesn't play well with ayahuasca. And so there are certain things that it's generally if you're on vitamins, normal supplements, protein powder, that sort of thing, even testosterone is fine, but it's always best to check with the organizers. And if the organizers don't know, they're going to ask the shaman. Yeah.
All right. So the third thing is they want to know how they can prepare themselves for the experience, including dietary restrictions, lifestyle changes, and spiritual practices.
Yeah, there's a lot there too.
Yeah, there is.
But I'm going to just start with a very general umbrella. Ayahuasca is a master realigner. And what that means is that the natural state that you were in when you were born and very, very young, before all the social conditioning, before your parents told you what you could and couldn't do, it puts you back into that most natural state that you came into this incarnation as. Most people in their daily lives, they're living out of alignment in many ways, not out of choice, because they are a slave to society, a slave to their job, their paycheck, and that's just the life of many people. When you live in this state of, let's just give it a arbitrary number, 60% alignment. 40% of it is just to deal with life, it's just to keep that job. It's just to keep friends that you might need somewhere down the line, etc. You have 40% that's doing things that it isn't necessarily happiest doing. when you drink ayahuasca, it will do its best to realign you. Maybe not completely in just one drinking. After all, we've been socially conditioned and living the way we've been living for 20, 30, some 40, even more years. And so the larger the difference of going from 60% alignment to, 80, 90, 100% alignment in after drinking Aya, the bigger the shock to just your psychological system. And so I think that's where that question is coming from. Like, how do I prepare for that? Or at least I'm giving it a different framework just for people to understand that's what you're aiming to do. You're aiming to move toward the more natural state. And so that can look like a lot of different things. If you can imagine, your body is just like held in a state of tension always. Stretching, getting your body moving, changing your diet so that the food is healthier, not stressing your system in just various ways. That's kind of a theme of the ways that you can make preparations. You don't want to come into contact with anything that is too extreme, too much drama emotionally. You want to stay away from people like that. If you do recreational drugs, you should probably stay away from those for a week at least. Yeah, I'm just riffing off the top of my head.
How about as far as like spiritual practices? Do you think anything needs to change in those regards?
I think I'm trying to speak to the average person. So I'm not assuming that they have a spiritual practice. I'm not assuming that they meditate. But if you do, then you should meditate as much as you feel comfortable doing, because that will definitely move you more into alignment, as meditators know.
The next one is a set and setting. They want to know how to create a comfortable and safe environment for themselves during the ceremony, including what to wear, what to bring, and how to deal with any discomfort or anxiety.
Gotcha. Okay. So first off, I am speaking from being an organizer, and I would not advise first time, second time, third time drinkers, anything under, I want to say 5 to 10, because I don't want to make it like a hard number, but you have to have enough experience under your belt with not various medicines, with this one consistent medicine in order to prepare a set and setting for yourself. So I'm not going to answer the question of how do you do set and setting in your house, because I don't advise that, especially for first-time drinkers or anything under like 5. So what a participant can do to prepare for that is warm, comfortable clothing, layers. For me, usually it's a t-shirt and sweatpants, and they're probably going to ask you to wear white. It's a good idea to wear white for various reasons. I've brought pillow and blanket to ceremonies. It also depends on you understanding how much space do I have in the ceremony. There are ceremonies where people are seated, which I don't think that's ideal, but there's so many different people organizing and they have all different ways of doing things. I think lying down is, for me, it's very important. I mean, the medicine just makes you want to lie down.
Do you feel like there's a difference from when you're sitting up versus lying down in terms of how the medicine moves through you?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of my main shamans, Little Owl, she always says, try to stay seated in the beginning. And I tried in the beginning.
Yeah,
but it's always like at like a 30, 40 minute mark, you're just like plop, you just like
yeah,
lay
because
down.
I feel like if I'm sitting up, I can't let go.
Right,
like
right.
a part of
Yeah.
me is still like saying, hey, maintain composure.
So in my experience, like I almost feel like that statement is a gauge. Is the medicine hitting everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much that it's that necessary to be seated, but we understand the chakra system. When you are seated and in a meditative state, or that your intention is set on any sort of focused thinking, I think that seated lotus position is very conducive to that. So in most of my journeys, I prefer to lie down. And rarely will I want to be seated and trying to focus on something. I feel like that is not going with the flow of the experience. But that's not to say that I've never done it. And that's not to say that you shouldn't do it either. You'll feel the natural flow for yourself and you'll know what's right for you.
Yeah, your body will tell you what it needs to do, basically.
Because you won't have enough ego that'll be like telling you, hey, sit up and like, let's focus on our business plan. I've known it to happen. I've heard participants actually say, oh, I got inspiration and I wrote up my whole business plan in my head. But that's not how I like to journey.
Yeah.
If you're still conscious enough that you can be having cognition and be analyzing things in your head, I think it's not quite deep enough for my personal taste.
Yeah.
I like feeling mostly not there or like destroyed, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those paradoxical things where like there have been so many people that are like, oh my God, that was too much. That was too intense. I never want to drink the medicine again. And then like the next day, they're ready to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's a super, super common thing that there will be this strong resistance in the beginning, but it's so therapeutic that you can't help but want to go back for more. And so it's one of the things that happens to a lot of people, the more medicine they drink, is we get to a point where we really enjoy destroying our ego, at least the bad parts of the ego, because I don't want to make it seem like ego is the enemy.
Yeah.
There's definitely a good use of ego.
Yeah, there's a time and a place for it.
Exactly. I know I tangented it a little bit. Yeah. What was the original thing?
Whether it's better to sit up or lie down.
Yeah, I think we answered that question. Preparations for a ceremony, how do you orient yourself? I think just really the most important thing is try to go in there as open-minded and open-hearted as you can. Obviously, we all will be constrained by our life experiences and everything.
Yeah.
So just do your best and be open to opening your mind and opening your heart. Be open to it.
Yeah, I think the more I'm like seeing the pattern with these questions is that obviously we want to lower anxiety when we go into something new, right? But then I think there's the X factor of what you just said. There are certain things that you're going to experience that you cannot prepare for. And when you don't know how you're going to feel, and that comes with just focusing on the openness so that you won't try to resist too much. And then in turn, hopefully the anxiety is lowered because you're not fighting too hard.
That's why I thought when you answered what you did about surrender, that's why I thought that was just so perfect. Because like you said, most of these questions are an attempt to try to control.
Yeah, control the experience before you're even going into it.
At least it's the way that I guess we're talking about control is that the mind is trying to exercise control by understanding it, right? It's not necessarily like I'm trying to control and dictate my experience. It's not that.
Yeah. No, I think, it comes from the idea of the more I know, the more I'm able to prepare. But it's like with ayahuasca and also a lot of things in life, you just can't, you know?
Yeah. And we're making this podcast because obviously if you have a foundation of information, you know, I'm not an organizer anymore. So I don't have anything to push. We
just want to share.
We just want to share what we know, and we know a lot. And we understand that the average person doesn't even have one person that they can even talk to about these sorts of things. I mean, in my years of working with a medicine, 7 years, I've established relationships with what I term as soul family, soul brothers and soul sisters from all around the world. And, you know, I'll talk to them every now and then. That's my life, you know, but I do understand that most people, they don't even have like one single person that they can talk to.
Okay, the next one is about integration. They want to know how to integrate the insights and experience they gain from the ceremony into their daily life, including how to process and make sense of what they experienced.
Oh man, I think we could do like a whole podcast on integration. Let's just touch on it.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure at some later date, we'll have to do like integration part 1.
Yeah. Out of 10 or something.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. going back to a foundation, a framework that I laid earlier, the general idea is that you're trying to reduce the distance between that perfect state. I guess perfect is not it's a charged word.
Maybe higher state.
Higher state, yeah. That higher state of alignment where you're so in touch with your true self, your soul, and then you get thrown back into your daily life. A lot of our daily activities, whether it's our job, dealing with our boss and coworkers, dealing with certain friends and family, they wear down on our alignment. And those things are really going to stand out post-ceremony.
The idea of integration is that you're going to see some stuff that is going to be hard to align with your regular life and your everyday self, but there are going to be some things that don't quite fit yet.
Okay,
and
I see.
You might not know why it doesn't.
I got it. When you receive information that you might not even necessarily understand, it's not uncommon for people to only realize the significance of certain wisdom that's presented to them 3 days later, a few weeks later. I've even heard like 6 months and a year later. And so when you can't understand it, you kind of just flow until things align in a way where you can understand it. Now, maybe let's say you download some information that you do understand, but you're just like, this is so idealistic. How do I even begin to like pull my life closer to, this ideal thing? Let's say you're stuck in a relationship that you've been shown that, okay, you should probably get out of it. Now, just to make things really complicated, let's say you have children with that person. If you feel compelled to view your current relationship in a way that is like confronting the truth, in some way is trying to show you like you need to get out of this, how do you integrate that into your life?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It might not be something that you're going to be able to resolve short term. But if Aya is presenting that to you, then it's true to your soul. And you probably know it on some level, you just don't want to see it. The best way to integrate it is just to do your best to pay attention to what you're feeling as indicators of changes that you should be making. They might just be small changes to begin with, because you never know how your transformation is going to play out. It could be like, stepping stone, this to that, to that, to that, to that. Maybe somewhere along the way, you'll meet a friend that is very compelling in the way that she speaks, and that'll be the thing. You never know. But pay attention to how you're feeling and know that especially after ceremony, your compass is going to be really, really accurate. It's going to be the best guidance that you can have. Anything that doesn't feel good, there's something misaligned there.
Going off of what you said, the integration process, the more I thought about it, is really intuitive, because Aya presents you a lot of feelings, a lot of symbols, a lot of things where it makes you feel a certain way, and having insights that kind of go along that. Because most people, they don't operate on an intuitive level.
Right.
So then it does take time to kind of take a step back, because you're going to see a lot of things that probably you never wanted to acknowledge, or maybe something that's completely brand new that's off your radar. And to kind of sit with that and not immediately try to take action, but hey, slow action, see what that was about. Think on, maybe some thought you could never hold for too long because you would dismiss it. And then in that process is doing your work. And I think the hardest part of the integration is that it is your own integration, right? People can tell you, oh, I think it means this, I think it means that. But it's like, what does it feel like to you when you saw that thing? Yeah.
For me, post-drinking ayahuasca, I normally don't want to rush back to the gym, because the gym is about breaking muscles down. It's about soreness. It's about tightening of tendons and joints and muscles. And all of those things are the opposite of what ayahuasca does to my body, which is relax it. even during my journeys, I'm doing a lot of stretching and a lot of weird, like non-existent yoga poses. It's just like, oh, that feels so good. Oh my God. What am I like? I'm in a pretzel position. I'm just like, what am I doing? I've never done this pose before, but it feels so good.
Yeah.
You just know what parts of your body need to be stretched out. You're just in this intuitive flow state. So for me, I understand that working out is something that I do for survival. As a young person, I like to go out. I like to party sometimes. And it's a requisite for my life. But I also understand that it's very taxing on my body. A lot of times it's telling me, man, you abuse your body so much. And here we are, we're going to help you restore it. I know you, Simon, to be someone who is physically and genetically really strong. And I just want to share this one thing you said to me one time, because I would never say this in my entire life. You said, I really like the feeling of moving weights, like pushing and pulling and lifting weights. What's been your experience with gymming after Aya? Because I know there's going to be a lot of young people that probably might want to rush back to the gym after they drink Aya.
Aya kind of relaxes you, opens everything up, and gymming is such a contraction, kind of really focused energy. And I remember attempting to work out because it's part of your routine, but just kind of realizing like, hey, your body doesn't need this right now.
Right.
You know, and I was still in kind of like a state of just listening to my body where, hey, right now it just doesn't need anything, you know, because a lot of the working out, just like what you said, it comes from, I guess, wanting to either be stronger, look a certain way. Yes, you get healthy,
Right.
but
It's like an ego thing.
yeah. It's more, because if you could just be healthy with or without it, then it's like whatever, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. Nobody's gymming for their soul.
Yes, no one's gymming for their soul.
I mean, unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger or somebody who's like destined to like win some medal because that's your journey at that point. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the average person that is gymming mainly for some sort of societal benefit.
Yeah, I think when people do rush back to it, is almost trying to reestablish an ego pattern. Like, okay, let's say try to drink Aya, and then when you're done with it, don't do anything that you previously done for a week. It'll be very hard.
Yeah,
It'll be very hard to just absorb whatever was the last thing you did, which was the Aya ceremony and the downloads you got from it. So, have you heard of anyone who came back to their regular like daily life and didn't change too much and was still able to integrate? At least from my experience, people have to do almost drastic things for the most part in order to become that new version.
Agreed. We have a saying called life is the real ceremony. And there's so many different ways that you could explain that. But in relation to what we're talking about, you can't simply just go to a ceremony and think, I've drank it and I'm done. It doesn't work like that. It's a little sad because if you go to such an extreme of drinking ayahuasca, this very sacred medicine that most people did not and could not even access because historically ayahuasca was drank by shamans only. We have the opportunity to actually drink ayahuasca now as normal lay people. For someone to drink the medicine and not revere and respect it, and the information that they're getting from the medicine, you haven't done your homework, first of all. The ceremony and the wisdom you got is like half of it, but the other half is really up to you.
Yeah, and I think it's good that you're framing it for people this way because like most things like Western medicine, where people just expect, I do the thing, it's done. And with this, it's like a whole process. Well, you did the thing, that was the beginning, and now you have to do the rest, which is the work.
That's true.
Okay, the next one is ceremony etiquette. They want to know what to expect of them during the ceremony, including how to behave and interact with others and what the traditional practices are.
I'm going to speak from my experience in most of the ceremonies I've been in. So we have this thing called the sacred silence, where you're trying your best to not be noisy, generally. That's what it means. Because sounds get amplified and emotions get amplified. So
And your reaction to emotions get amplified.
yeah. So there's triggering all over the place. It's like this a circle and it's like bing, bing, pew, 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 pew. Everybody's triggering everybody in different ways. I mean, you could hear someone crying and go into this like whole other different part of your journey because it elicited some sort of memory, you know? Or you could just be like, oh, I feel so sad for them. Like I want to send them love and light.
I cried for someone before that I don't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody has to really do their best to respect everybody's journey, and you just try to like make as little noise as you can. So that's the first thing. You might see the person next to you like having a really hard time, and just being the empathetic person that you are, or maybe you see something in them that reminds you of someone that you care about or that you have cared about in the past, eliciting a reaction where you're like, oh, I just want to hold their hand and let them know that I'm here. Like it's going to be okay. We also try to not do stuff like that either, because that's your journey and you don't know what they're going through. You have no idea what they're going through. Maybe the hand could be helpful or maybe like detrimental. You don't know. Obviously, there will always be exceptions to these general guidelines that can be okay, but we're talking about a general guideline, right? Another thing is try not to invade other people's space. I know you, Simon, are very rock-like.
Yeah, I'm a statue.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
stoic.
So you just stay in one place. You're a rock. I'm the complete opposite. I kind of sprawl out and like I'm everywhere. But it also depends on if you've sat in this group more than a few times, they're just gonna be like, oh, this is Ryan like sprawling out and like, you know, in some weird pretzel position again, you know? So the etiquette is really to try to minimize your impact on other people's journey. Now, the other side of that is during the exceptions, when you do speak to other people, interact with other people, feel the need to start doing spontaneous Reiki and like send energy and pray for people, those are exceptions and those are okay too.
Yeah, I remember one time with me and Amy where, because both of us are pretty stoic, the angels felt that we were holding the quiet space for how loud everything else was getting, you know? So it's like intuitively, it was just like, okay, we're the ones who are kind of grounding the experience as everyone is kind of losing it. So yeah, I think as much as people want to behave a certain way or whatnot in their general guidelines, when the time comes, you can't predict how you're going to be sometimes.
I know for me and another sacred brother, Dan Ban, a lot of times during ceremony, we'll feel compelled to start doing Reiki, which is energy work with our movement, with our hands. And we started doing it actually not having been trained in Reiki. And then so I decided to study it a little bit. You feel like you're moving energy around.
Yeah, there's something intuitive about it.
It requires no thought at all. Yeah. And there have been many ceremonies where instead of just sitting in my own space, you start to double in your role and you become one of the angels. But it might be like an energy angel. And then so you start to move around and you start to do things that you feel compelled to do to shift and move energy around. That's also an exception, but it's a very beautiful thing when that happens, because most likely you're not doing it for yourself. Most likely you're doing it because you're connected on an energy level and you're a conduit that is able to manipulate the energy of the room to assist in the overall experience of the other participants. Mm-hmm. That's also another thing that happens is that in ceremony, particular people get called to play certain roles. And these are all exceptions because you'll never know who's going to be called to do what. But that's why exceptions can also be okay and fine and beautiful.
Yeah.
I wanted to add one more thing about etiquette. Don't sing along with the shaman. It's not conducive to making the music sound good. It makes it sound pretty bad. There was one participant that would howl like a husky when Little Owl sang. I'm going to do my best impression. And this would be in the middle of ceremony.
Yeah.
And everybody would hear it. And he couldn't help himself. I just kind of felt like maybe you should start singing
Yeah.
or like
maybe that's
have
what
some
it
sort
is.
of outlet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he is a creative person. Like he can dance quite well, improv. Like,
So it was
he could just-
consistent that he would make that noise.
well, I've heard him make that noise in a few
Oh,
ceremonies.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably.
And that's a main thing is that never sing over the shaman.
Mhm.
They probably wouldn't say it this way, but I'm going to say it. You're not the star of the show. And if you feel so compelled to doing it, hey, maybe somewhere down the line, you're supposed to be a shaman, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I have no desire to sing. So it's interesting when I see someone after being told not to sing,
Right.
they're going to sing anyway. But yeah.
For me personally, I've been an organizer, I've been an angel, and I used to be a music producer. So melody lines, harmony lines are second nature to me. I usually don't feel compelled to sing or sing along, but there are times where it's like my song. You know, it's like, oh, she's singing my favorite song. And there have been times where she sings songs that we have performed together. And so for me, it's a little bit different because I have a history of performing with certain shamans. And so even if it's unspoken, at most, I would probably just sit up and move closer to the shaman, but not invade the shaman's space in a sort of like act of respect. And I might harmonize softly. I do it being conscientious of everybody's journey. I'm not going to try to sing over the shaman because that's going to affect everybody's journey.
The next question, the role of the shaman. They want to know what to expect from the shaman, including the role in the ceremony, how to communicate with them, and what to do if they need help.
Let's do it one by one. There's like 3 parts to
Yeah.
that question.
So what to expect from the shaman?
Okay. The shaman is not your best friend. So don't go asking
not your
everything to
therapist.
the shaman.
Yeah.
The shaman is generally not the window of communication. It's generally the organizer. So even if you have the contact of the shaman, be extremely respectful. Treat them like a CEO or a celebrity. Like, don't just think you can ask anything to them. They are the anchor, the energetic anchor of the experience. So they are sort of part teacher, part God, part performer, part human, part spirit. They're sort of like a combination of all those things. So their role really is to infuse your experience with their intentions, their desire to heal, their experience.
I think a big part of it is like what you're saying. It's like energy management. They pull you in, they're managing the ceremony, and then most importantly, they pull you back out. I guess the last part is and what to do if they need help. But I think that's more of like an angel thing versus the shaman actually intervening and assisting you.
Well, the role of a shaman, on occasion, they will intervene.
Okay.
So it is their role to intervene if they find that it's necessary to. Some shamans, they will do it, and some shamans just don't want to. They just feel like you can handle it. There's different viewpoints on this, but if a shaman saves you from the depths of your darkness,
It's kind of like disempowering you, basically.
yeah, but I think a shaman will also gauge, whoa.
Yeah, I
They're
gotta-
going
I gotta
way
step
too
in.
crazy, and it's like a cost benefit thing. We used to have rooms to take people that have kind of gone overboard, that were far away from the circle so that you could hardly hear them. And in those circumstances, the angels will just stay with them and the shaman will continue to take care of the circle. There have been also times where the shaman will go to specific people and assist. The shaman will feel compelled to do that if the medicine that we're all connected to is telling her that. Because that's one thing that happens in ayahuasca ceremonies is that we kind of get linked up to the same network. And that's also why the shaman drinks a little bit of ayahuasca. She doesn't drink the full dose because she can't be like going places while she's singing, but she does generally drink enough for her to connect But if you need help, the first thing that you should do is you should call over the angels. Maybe the angel kind of just gives a few words to you, and then you go back and then you're okay. It may also be that those few words aren't enough, and then you want to call another angel over, or you want to call the same angel over again. But again, it's a case by case thing, but that's what you should do. If you feel like I really need help, that's what the angels are there for.
The next question is, most people want to know about the spiritual and cultural significance of ayahuasca. They want to know about the spiritual and cultural traditions surrounding it, including the history, mythology, and the significance of indigenous cultures.
Wow. It's said that they've been using ayahuasca for thousands of years, but who really knows? But in the past, when you had a problem, if you were part of the village and you had a problem, let's say something's in my stomach, I don't know what it is, you go to the shaman, they're actually the one that drinks the medicine. So they drink the medicine and it gives them the ability, it connects them with like a higher level where they're able to like look at you.
Divine insight or something like that, right?
And they're able to like look at you and do a scan and know exactly what plants that they need to go pick in the Amazon that will cure you. And it sounds kind of far-fetched, kind of fantastical, but if you've drank ayahuasca before, you'll be able to entertain this concept because you start to do a lot of things very intuitively that really just flow. And that flow takes you sometimes to other dimensions. It's regarded as a very sacred medicine in most of the places like Peru and Brazil where it's consumed, because in Brazil, it's strongly tied and associated with the Santo Daime Church. And they do ceremonies in a very, very different way. But as you can imagine, it's part of the church. So it's also spirituality. In Peru, it's more indigenous people in a tribe. I've been to Peru twice, and the average person in Peru is not drinking ayahuasca.
That's crazy how that works, right?
Yeah, they're disconnected from that. And hardly anybody had ever used ayahuasca.
But did they know of it at least?
Not all of them.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah, not all of them.
Okay, the next question is about follow-up care. They want to know how to take care of themselves after the ceremony, including what to eat, what to avoid, and how to deal with any physical or emotional after effects.
I'm smiling because follow-up care is like such a Western clinical term.
Yeah.
Like post-surgery, what do I need to do to like...
Well, I think Chat GPT is a Western AI at this point.
Follow-up. First, just know that your emotional GPS is going to be clearer than ever. So listen to that and respond to it and start to do things differently. Very similar to the dieta beforehand, these will be kind of intuitive to most people. Like they just won't want to grab chips and eat chips. They're not going to want to eat ramen right after a ceremony. They're not going to want to eat beef, like steak. They're not going to want to eat like heavy meats. We know that eating of junk foods is tied to escapism in a way where you're like, it was a really tough day. I'm so tired. I'm sad too. I'm lonely. So I'm like eating pizza.
Yeah, a whole
Your
pizza.
favorite. Yeah. So we do use junk food to kind of regulate our experience
I
of
think
life.
That's why it exists, right? Because
Yeah,
if enough people are regulating with that, they're not going to try to explore other things.
Yeah.
But I think the more I look at the question again, I guess the best thing for follow-up care is to not put things into your body or not do things that will kind of instantly take away your ayahuasca experience. Because if you're instantly like you're eating like junk food, you're smoking or whatever activities, working out instantly, because after the ceremony, there's going to be a brief period of time where you're still kind of in that state, like what you're talking about. And to go back to exactly what you're eating, what you're doing, you're not really doing that follow-up care, which I guess is what a lot of people want to know. Okay. The last one, the legal status of ayahuasca. They want to know about the legal status in their country or region, whether it is legal or safe to participate in ceremonies.
Well, I would say that it's illegal in most countries. And the legal status, it deters most people from even trying. And I can understand the fear. I would just say that that's also part of the game. That's part of the game to keep out the people that are not really serious about wanting that catastrophic change in their life. And the ego is going to be like, well, I'm just scared because like I don't want to like get in trouble with the law. I don't know of any organization or any group that has gotten in trouble with the law.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard any story. Because I feel like if they did, you would actually hear it everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they can't wait to kind of pull the plug on something like that.
Right.
You know?
And even the stories that you've heard, like that you can search the internet and like find stories. I know that they exist, and I'm sure I've seen some of them, but you have to know like how many ceremonies there are around the world on the weekends.
Yeah.
You can't use it's illegal as an excuse to not drink it because there are plenty of places, including more and more cities in the US that have decriminalized psychedelics. There are websites where you can actually search, is ayahuasca legal, you know, in my country? I mean, come on, just use Google or Chat GPT.
Yeah, exactly. That was all 10 things that people typically want to know, first-time drinkers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Wisdom of Ayahuasca.